to the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brad and John, they're the ones to follow. Yeah, ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
It is the BJ Show. I am Brad. He is John. What's today's date? The 23rd or the 24th, John?
It's the 24th today.
24th. This is February 24th. This is the A block, which means we start it right at 7 o'clock. That is John Combest. Spell it Combest. I spell it because you need the proper spelling for his web address, which is John Combest, johncombest.com. John gets together every single morning with me. Well, at least not on the weekends because he's a wimp and he went through Saturday and Sunday, but I'm here, but he's not. But that's a whole other story. Okay. And we get together. John had a whole dissertation about daily means Monday through Sunday and weekdays means Monday through Friday. Isn't that the way you put it out, John?
Yeah, it annoys me when people say they do a daily show when it's Monday through Friday, or they do a daily newsletter and it's Monday through Friday. That's not daily. That's weekday. Daily means you do it every day.
And John does it every single day for 23 plus years now? Isn't that what it is? 24?
Yeah, but who's counting?
But who's counting? We bring this guy along. What's your name again, sir?
I'm Casey Kasem.
And what does he do? He counts them down for us. All the different things that John Combest has on johncombest.com. He curates it. I love that word. Curates it to the top 3. And we start off with...
In third place,
a feel-good story in what seems to be a sea of bad news about the Trump administration, terrifying news about those budget cuts, a follow-up from a story that we did at the beginning of the month. You and I talked about the Ritenour School District and how they were in line for a whole bunch of electric school buses, but they could only afford to bring in 3 of them because the rest of them were stuck in Illinois thanks to Donald Trump. Donald Trump had frozen the funding. Boy, that's a tongue twister. He had frozen the funding. But guess what? That funding is unfrozen. And Ritenour School District is now in possession after weeks of limbo of electric school buses. This story is brought to us by Kate Grumke of St. Louis Public Radio. And she posted this late on Friday. So good news for Ritenour School District. You'll recall that when we discussed this, one of the terrors of the current fossil fuel-driven buses in Ritenour is that some of the school buses don't even have air conditioning. How are students supposed to exist on a bus without air conditioning? So let's put a bow on this. Electric buses coming to Ritenour. And remember, Brad, these electric buses are going to save a ton of money because instead of using fossil fuels, they can use beautiful, clean electric charging stations.
Did you know they have a fight song? That Ritenour High School has a fight song?
I did not know that. What is it?
It was written by Frank Zappa. Have you ever heard this song before?
No, I haven't. What is it?
Watch out where you go. Don't watch out where the Huskies go. Don't you eat that yellow snow. Watch out where the Huskies go. Don't you eat that yellow snow. You never heard that before?
No, amazingly. In all my years in the Suburban North Conference, Brad, playing against Ritenour, I never remember that. You got a great memory, but Frank Zappa was more your era than mine, right?
Yeah, and I love the way him and Elon Musk have a thing for naming their kids. His one kid's named Dweezil, and
I remember Dweezil, yeah.
And his other kid is named Moon Unit. Did you know that?
No, I did not know that. Moonya, like pull your pants down?
No, Moon Unit. Moon Unit. Like
Moon Unit Zappa. Yeah, I did. Now that you mentioned that, I recognize that name. Dweezil and Moon Unit, yeah.
Moon Unit. And one of Trump's, or not one of Musk's kids is named like D35ZQR, some weird name. What's your name again, kid? Oh, well, I was named after my invention that my father made. It's D3QIUZR !#. Oh, that's
interesting. You think his friends maybe just call him alphanumeric?
I have no idea. Okay, we ready for number 2?
I think we are, yeah.
Up a notch to number 2.
A big story from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch over the weekend, Dems in disarray. Now, Brad, this has always been a point of contention between you and I. You say Republicans fight too much. I say Democrats fight amongst themselves a whole lot. This one takes place in St. Louis City and a little bit in St. Louis County. Last Monday, there's a progressive state senator from Columbia named Stephen Weber. Very well respected, has done a lot for Democrats across the state. And he was looking back at some old Missouri statutes, some old outdated statutes, statutory prohibitions that have been outdone by Supreme Court rulings over the years. One of them was there was still technically a statutory prohibition in Missouri on gay marriage. And Stephen Weber wanted to do something symbolic and say, let's get rid of this ban on same-sex marriage. It's 2025. What kind of a state do we want to be? And in a ceremonial vote, a bunch of Republicans voted no, voted against it, say, look, let's not do the symbolism stuff. Let's just leave it how it is. Which probably isn't newsworthy, right, Brad? You would probably expect Republicans to just kind of take a pass on that, wouldn't you?
Oh, yeah, they're wimps.
Yeah, so they wouldn't take a stab at saying, hey, we stand up for gay marriage. But what raised proverbial eyebrows is that a Democrat state senator named Karla May from St. Louis City, she voted with Republicans against this amendment. Now, it was pretty quiet, it seems like, at the beginning of the week. And then folks on Twitter, formerly known as Twitter, now known as X, got wind of it. And boy, were they mad. You know, a lot of people in St. Louis that are affluent white female liberals, better known as AWFLs, they were really mad at Karla May. They started tweeting at her. They started calling her names. One person even called her a "see you next Tuesday," which I think is, you know, you don't go around calling women "see you next Tuesdays." And for her part, Karla May didn't seem to really care to offer an explanation for why she voted against this, why she voted for the Republicans. But some of my favorite stuff on social media is when you have people that really don't have any idea what they're talking about issue threats to elected officials. There were multiple people on X, Brad, that were so mad at Karla May that say they're going to vote her out of office. Now, Karla May is term limited, so I don't think she gives a heck about those kind of allegations, even if those people lived in her district. But it goes to show, Brad, there was some back and forth in this piece. And I should point out that it's brought to us by Jack Suntrup of the Post-Dispatch. There's a little back and forth here because there were a couple Democrats that have stood up for Karla May and say, listen, just being a Democrat doesn't mean you have to buy into what everybody else in the Democratic Party thinks about this issue or that issue. We also heard from a Democratic committee woman named Maxie Glamour, and she is the first non-binary drag performer to be elected to the St. Louis Democratic Committee. She's technically a committee woman. I believe she's a guy, but she's technically a committee woman. And so she was very critical of Senator Karla May. So, Brad, I guess it shows that even in the Democratic Party, on some of these issues, we can't say that all the Democrats march in lockstep with each other because some of them have a little bit of independent thinking.
John, not true in the Senate when they're voting on people that Trump has nominated for his cabinet, things like that, because almost all the votes have been strictly along party lines.
Yeah. So I think most people would note that the U.S. Senate is probably not the same thing as the Missouri Senate. So I don't think that undermines my point. But yeah, Brad. And so here's Karla May, who's term limited, who doesn't really owe anything to AWFLs in Tower Grove or activists in St. Louis County.
I was saying that as a reference that because of the fact that you said the Democrats, but I get what you're saying. These are U.S. Democrats as opposed to state Democrats, which is different. Did you know there's a different level of membership with that? With
I didn't know that at all. No.
State versus federal, yeah. Not every person who's a state Democrat can become a federal Democrat. There's a test they have to take, and sometimes they pass it. Okay, I don't know what number one is, but if number one is not what I think it is, then we need to talk about something that I heard and I did a little research on, and it comes squarely back to you. So I'm going to take a shot and hit number one.
The number one.
And see if it's what I think it is, but if it's not, we have something else to talk about, okay?
Is the number one issue have to do with, I don't know, a topic that landed in Missourians' mailboxes over the last week, Brad?
I don't know about that because I don't have a mailbox that I check anymore. So.
Does it have to do with a farm chemical?
Yes, it does.
Well, you accurately predicted story number one, Brad, and I was in line to have a different story for number one today to kind of rejigger these around. But we got to talk about it, Brad. I don't want this to be a show where I come on all the time and I say, in my day, did I ever tell you I used to work at Monsanto and then we made glyphosate. Let me tell you about glyphosate. I don't want to beat a dead horse over and over again. But I'm too close to the situation to be too objective about it. But I'll give you the broad strokes of it anyway, Brad. I got what prompted this, other than the story being hot in Missouri today and this week and this year, is I got a mailer over the weekend, and it says, why is David Gregory on the fence? And this piece wants me to call my state senator, David Gregory, to keep, quote, Chinese Communist Party chemicals out of our food. Now, this shows Senator David Gregory like a Photoshop version of his head, a poorly Photoshopped version of David Gregory sitting on a fence, saying that we need him to fight to protect American agriculture manufacturers and prevent outsourcing our food supply to China. So that seems pretty reasonable. If you got that in your mailbox, wouldn't you think, hey, isn't my state senator a Chi-Com? Would you think that, Brad?
I would. And matter of fact, I would immediately go over and dump all my bad electronics that died of me in his front yard. Hey, look at this junk you made. That's what I do.
Look at what you've done to our electronic supply. Don't do it with chemistry.
Right.
Before I forget, Brad, so I'll point people to my website today. A few pieces on glyphosate I have up. There's a gentleman in Southwest Missouri, who we've talked about before, State Rep Ben Baker. And he has what's called the Man Cave Caucus. He's got a podcast, and he brought on the sponsor of this bill, which is a bear bill. Let's be blunt here. It's a pro-bear bill. And the guy's name is Dane Diehl, and he knows a lot about agriculture. He's carrying this bill. He carried it last year, and the bill did not pass. And he's carrying it again this year. And Brad, the broad strokes of this are that the industry, the chemistry industry, the herbicide, pesticide industry, would say that if the EPA has a label on a herbicide that says, look, here's the dangers of the herbicide, here's what's real about the herbicide. If a product has that label, then you can't come back in Missouri and sue for damages because you say, I was harmed by this and I need money from Bayer or another pesticide company. So that's the broad strokes of it. Real quick, Brad, tell me how you knew that this was going to be story number one.
No, I didn't necessarily know it was going to be story number one. I knew it was a hot button issue, but I didn't. And let me try to. Here's the thing. I'm a little bit confused about this. Okay, so what this bill essentially says is, and I'm going to give you one of my crazy weird analogies. Okay, let's say you go to the store. And you go to a grocery store and they're selling bottles of arsenic. And you look at the bottle and it goes, oh my God, that looks so good. It's in a pretty bottle. I'd like to go home and had a couple of shots of that, tilted that bottle, the arsenic back. And then you looked on the bottle and it said, harmful or fatal if swallowed. And so if you swallowed that, and let's say you got really sick or you died, essentially the fact that it had a label on it essentially holds them harmless. Is that what the deal is?
I think, Brad, if you took your analogy to that extreme, I think the basis of what you're saying is the notion of the bill. Now, the reason why your analogy doesn't hold up is because glyphosate is not arsenic.
But essentially what this legislation is, if they stick a label on it,
And who's they?
Well, the manufacturers. I mean,
no, that's not what this bill is about. So you bring up a good point in that you have to have language from a federal authority. So you have to have an EPA label. And see, this is the basic stuff that people don't get. You can't just go out and manufacture a herbicide and sell it. The EPA tells you what you have to put on that label.
Okay, so in other words, this is what the EPA mandated label. It's sort of like, we've talked about this before, it's sort of like the Proposition 65 thing from California.
Correct, yeah, that has anything that could possibly be construed as being a cancer-causing product has to have a gaudy label on it.
That says
in California.
Yeah, well, in the entire country, because I buy stuff all the time that has Proposition 65 warnings.
You're right.
on it.
Yeah, it's got a Prop 65 warning. You're right about that.
Okay,
now, go ahead, Brad.
So in other words, so in other words, what this bill would essentially do is, by the fact that the EPA has given, let's use an example, Bayer, this language, they put that on the label, then Bayer is essentially indemnified from somebody suing them?
I believe that's the notion of the bill. And by the way, I know we will have many folks from a certain agriculture corporation based in Germany listening to this today, and also state legislators. So if I got that wrong, correct me on it. Text me, and I will be happy to correct it now or in the future on tomorrow's show.
Well,
but go ahead, Brad.
But you and I have talked about this before, and I find this, and don't get what I'm going to say the wrong way, but I find this fascinating that you see, jury verdict after jury verdict after jury verdict against glyphosate and Monsanto and Bayer now. Okay, people have cancer from it, blah, 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 blah. But yet I can go across the highway when we get off the air and go into the big box store and buy a gallon of this stuff, and that's
you're exactly right.
That's
Brad.
what I don't understand.
And so, go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Well, I was going to say that's what I don't understand. If it's so bad, why is it still being sold?
Yeah. Well, first of all, glyphosate doesn't cause cancer. So when I look at friends in the legislature who are anti-Bayer, I think that their argument would be strengthened by not leaning on bad science and saying, hey, this is a cancer-causing pesticide, because it's not. I think if I were making an argument against Bayer, if I were making the argument against Bayer, I would say, look, people should have a right to sue in this country. You can't give blanket immunity to one company just because their product is super important. Like, that's the argument I would be making. And if I was one of these folks arguing against Bayer, I wouldn't lean on bad science and then go scrambling to Google, bad scientific reports that claim glyphosate is dangerous, because it's not. But I think that the issue here, if you're a conservative Republican, is why are we giving immunity to one company? Like, why can't Pfizer come in next year and say, hey, P.S., we need a law that says that if you take our COVID vaccine, you can never hold us accountable because it's really important. And the government said so. You get what I'm saying?
Because they already have that.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Didn't they already get that from the government? Hey, here's this vaccine. We haven't really tried it. But Dr. Fauci says it's okay. As a matter of fact, Dr. Fauci says if you take this vaccine, you'll never get COVID again. And more importantly, you won't pass it along to anybody. It's this magic thing.
Remember when people believed that? That was so funny.
Well,
to get back to this, Brad, I don't know how we got to a point in Missouri. And I'm way too close to this, but I don't know how we got to a point in Missouri where a big ag-focused company that used to be Monsanto and now is Bayer, that they lost the legislature. Like, I don't know how your relationships with legislators got that bad. I know that trial attorneys are huge funders of the Missouri Freedom Caucus now, and trial attorneys obviously oppose this legislation. So the money certainly plays a role in this debate. And Brad, I know that we're up against time. I would repeat what I've been saying for a year, which is I do not see how Bayer continues to move forward with what we used to call a chemistry business, with a crop protection business. And if you are at Bayer and you're in Germany and you are not actively for the last few years seeking out buyers for the glyphosate business, seeking buyers for the dicamba business, and helping Bayer exit the chemistry industry, this path for Bayer is not sustainable. You cannot keep this pace of lawsuits, litigation, public relations disasters. You can't keep this going. And I repeat, Brad, Bayer is going to sell off its chemistry assets. I wouldn't be surprised if they sell it to China. But hey, that's just speculation, Brad. I'm not paid to shill for that company anymore.
John, you know what I have sitting here in the studio right in front of the console? I have something very important. You know what it is?
Is it a line from Gary V?
No, it's my COVID-19 vaccination record card. And it shows...
Oh, nice. Did you have it laminated?
It shows on February 26th of 2021. So I'm coming up on my 4-year anniversary, February 26, 2021, at the Compass Health Center in RAC, Raymore, Missouri. I got my first dose. My second dose was on 3/26 of 21 at Compass Healthcare in Raymore, Missouri. I drove 1,000 miles, 250 miles each way back and forth 4 times to get my my COVID. And Dr. Fauci told me that I would not get COVID, and I've had it 3 times. So what the hell did I do?
Hey, you know what I say, Brad? What's the hardest part for a man about going to get a COVID vaccine?
Not having a nurse that you like.
No, telling your friends you're gay.
Whatever that means. Okay. This sort of reminds me of, you want me to tell you the interesting aspect of giving blood as a group? Should I ever tell you this crazy? No.
I do, Brad. It sounds like a bizarre radio initiation scheme.
No. I learned this when we did a lot of stuff. We'll talk. Remind me to do the Mercy thing next, the Mercy blood bank next break, okay?